Hey guys, welcome back to PP Academy. In today's episode, we're going to talk about ratting in corrupted dungeons. Right now, a lot of players are complaining about rats in corrupted dungeons, and a lot of players are ratting corrupted dungeons. In this video, I hope to show people whether if it's actually worth it to rat corrupted dungeons. Now, in case you don't know what ratting means, ratting can be defined by the acronym run and take, meaning you don't actually fight people, you just take the loot and you run away. So when it comes to corrupted dungeons, that means every time you go into a PvP encounter, you break the crystals and you get out of that PvP encounter for free. And you don't actually try to kill players, you just go there for the PvE and the loot. Now, like I said, I've told people repeatedly that this is totally not worth it to do in corrupted dungeons. It's actually, you'll actually get a lot more silver and fame from just doing regular solo dungeons, and it's safer to do regular solo dungeons, okay? And in this video, we're gonna go ahead and prove it. So what we're gonna do is first, we're gonna do a lot of faction flagged red zone solo dungeons. Now, the reason why I'm doing these faction flagged, as opposed to just like going to like a TA zone is we want this experiment to be as convenient and as realistic as possible, right? So if I yes, I am in Blue Army and I can go to one of Blue Army's T8 hideouts and just do all of my solo dungeons from there. But if you don't have hideouts in the TA zone, you might find it inconvenient to go all the way out there to Fame Farm, right? So we're gonna do these dungeons in red zones. Now red zones is like scrub level content, right? Red zone solo dungeons are very low fame per hour, but there is an upside to it, and that's the faction flagging. The faction flagging does make the silver per hour a bit more consistent. It's not better or worse than black zones, it's just more consistent, right? Because theoretically in black zones you get better RNG on your chests, and theoretically you should get more loot from black zone solo dungeons. But red zone is more consistent because the silver income there is based on how many mobs you can kill, and not so much on how good your luck is when you open those chests. Okay, so we're gonna do 2 hours of red zone solo dungeons first, and then we're gonna go rat some corrupted dungeons. Now, when I go to those corrupted dungeons, in order to make this experiment realistic, I need to die a lot first because my infamy level is higher than what your infamy level would be if you were to just jump into corrupted dungeon today and start ratting. Because the loot that you get from corrupted dungeons does scale with the amount of infamy you have, right? So the more infamy you have, the better loot you will have, right? So I have high infamy from, well, not really that high, but I have higher infamy from PvP, right? So I need to die first to lose all of my infamy, and then I start ratting, and we'll compare the results both in fame and in silver per hour from the ratting and the solo dungeons. Okay, so let's get started. First, take a look at my faction info. I'm currently flagged up as Marlock, and I have around 2,000 points to start with. And then here's my Destiny board. Now I have a little fame credits to start with. I'm gonna go ahead and put it into my boots because when they split the artifact trees for my boots, I think I used to have 100 specs on it, but I'm not sure. But anyway, like I don't have 100 specs on it anymore, so I'm gonna make sure that I have 100 specs in every piece of my gear. I need a little more points than this. So I'm gonna take it out of one of my weapons. Okay, so I just took some points out of Baton Bow and I dumped it into my boots, and now I have 100 specs in every piece of gear that I'm currently using. And I have 600, a bit over 600k fame credits left, right? So we're gonna keep that in mind. Now that way, when we go fame farming, we will know that like the amount of fame credits I'm getting is from like a perfect set, right? It's from the helmet, the chest, the boots, the offhand, and the main hand, all at 100 specs. And by the way, the build that I am using is my my spear build with a new Avalonian spear instead of the one-hand spear. it's probably not much of a difference which spear to use, whether it's Avalonian or one hand. I'm just using the Avalonian because I crafted a whole bunch of them when the patch dropped. Okay, so I'm gonna use the Avalonian spear both to clear the dungeon and to rat the corrupted dungeons. Right, so I'm gonna be using basically the exact same build, the exact same tier, all with 100 specs. Right, so everything is controlled. We're using the same thing for everything. Okay, and also another thing is this build, like, it can be used to fame farm pretty efficiently. It's not like I'm fame farming with arcane staff or something. This is a pretty efficient build for fame farming. It is also a pretty efficient build for running away from people because there's a lot of mobility with your inner focus, your E, and your boots. So when it comes to running away from people in corrupted dungeons, this is not a build for that either. So that way we can use the same build for everything, and it's kind of a decent build for everything. It's not the best for fame farming, it's not the best for ratting, but it's kind of like pretty decent for everything. Okay, so it's been a bit less than an hour and a half, and you can tell because you can see that I have 7 cabbage soups left in my equip tip slot. I started with 10, and so I used 2 cabbage soups, right? And that's 1 hour. And then the third one is still running. You can see in my buff bars about a quarter of the way left, right? So we're just a bit under an hour and 30 minutes. And you can look at my inventory here. It says my inventory has 800k worth of loot, but that's not including the silver bags, right? Because the silver bags don't get counted in that estimate. Now, if you include the silver bags, that's roughly 200k, so add that to the 800k estimate down there. We're at roughly a mil in silver income, and that's just from the loot. So I couldn't quite make it to 2 hours. I'm gonna call it here. I'm gonna find myself a quick way to get back to town, and I'm gonna see how much I made in terms of faction points. Okay, so I just got back to town and I already traded in my points for rock cards, and I've already listed them. You can see them right here. They're listing for 600k, but after tax it's somewhere around like 580k. Now, of course, I did this wrong. Because I started out with 2,000 points, right? So if I took out those 2,000 points, I would have ended up with the night rock cards and a few crests. So it would be closer to like maybe, I don't know, 550 points, something like that. 550 silver, I mean. Okay, so let's do some quick math here. Now, we said that earlier we made roughly a mil from the loot and the silver bags, right? So 1 million plus the crests, which I guess we bought it too much. It will be closer to probably around like 550k instead of 580k, right? So let's do 550k, and this is over a bit under under an hour and a half. So if we look at the clips from earlier, the last piece of food that I ate was a quarter of the way left, right? So we know each piece of food is 30 minutes. So we do 30 minutes divided by 4, 7.5 minutes. So 30 minutes minus 7.5 minutes plus 60 minutes. This is how much we actually farmed for. We farmed for 82.5 minutes. Okay, so we do that, and what was it again? Okay, let's do that again. 85 82.5. Okay, so 82 we do 155,000. Math is not my strong suit, as you can tell, but is that divided by 82.5? Number key 82.5. Oh my god, this is so hard. Okay, so we're making that much silver per minute, so times 60, we're making 1.1 million silver per hour in red zone solo dungeons. Okay, now let's do the same thing for fame. So earlier wait, this is after. Earlier we ended up with this much fame, 675,233. Okay, and right now I have 193. Okay, so let's start with this. 193 1124 minus the amount that we started out with, so there's 600k, so minus 675,223. This is how much fame that we made over the 82.5 minutes. So let's divide that by divided by 82.5. This is how much fame we made per minute, so times 60. Okay, so we made almost 1 million fame credits per hour. We made 913 fame credits per hour. And this is in a red zone, guys. If you want to fame farm, you go to a black zone. If you have access to like a TA zone, you do like TA random dungeons or TA like 8.28 maps, you will get a lot more fame per hour than this. Okay, so again, keep in mind this is all in red zone. Okay, so we're gonna start doing the corrupted dungeons now, but before I start, I need to go kill myself a whole bunch in corrupted dungeons, because like I said earlier, in order for this experiment to be somewhat realistic, I need my infamy to be really low, right? Because I have infamy from PvPing. I'm gonna die a whole bunch to get rid of that infamy to simulate like a player that just started ratting corrupted dungeons. Now, like I said earlier, ratting is, in my opinion, not worth it, right? But let's say, for example, if you were to actually PvP your way to the top and you have like 2 million fame credits, 2 million infamy, and you are getting a lot of infamy boost on your chest, at that point, I guess it makes sense for you to go rat, but that's not what people are doing. Like right now, you see people with like 5k infamy and just ratting away in these corrupted dungeons. So we're gonna simulate what they're doing. We're gonna tank our infamy to their level, and then we're gonna do this. So I went and killed myself a whole bunch, and I got my infamy down to 11.5k. At this point, I think it's good enough. Like, I'm not starting at 0, like you will be starting at 0, but at this point, it's really hard for me to tank any farther because the matchmaking system have already like slowed down for me at this point. It takes a long time now to find someone to invade me or to invade someone else, and at this point, if I like, because my infamy is already so low, every time I die, I'm losing like only 1k infamy. So this is where I will start doing my ratting at 11.5k infamy. Okay, so quick math here. We started with 11.5k, and each dungeon gives you roughly 750. We're going to estimate upwards. Sometimes people clear a few extra mobs after they spawn the boss. So we're going to estimate it upwards. And we're going to say each dungeon gives you 780 infamy, right? So if you make that division, then it will take you roughly 14.7, so like 14 to 15 dungeons to get to the point where I started, right? So if you're just starting to rat with 0 infamy right now, it's going to take you 15 dungeons to get to the point where I started, and during that time, you're actually going to be getting worse loot than I am getting. So earlier, after the fame farming in red zone solo dungeons, I ended up with 1.9 mil fame credits. I'm going to spend that fame credit now, and we're gonna get it as close to 0 as possible so we can get a easier time estimating how much fame we made from this ratting. Okay, so after spending as much fame credits as I could, I got it down to 98 fame credits to start with. Okay, so my food just ran out, and that means we've been here for an hour now, and I just clicked a bunch of my bags, but we actually had like 230 of these bags plus 435k of loot. So you hit the calculator, that's 665k's worth of loot from the chest, which is roughly half of what we made from the red zone. And in terms of fame, we made 800 and we are at 880k. We started at a little bit, I think it was like a little bit less than 100. We can go back to check it in a second, but if it's let's say if roughly it's 800k, then we made roughly 100k less than from Resident Dungeons. All right, there's a few more things to talk about though with the comparison between the two. First, in red zones, there are no dives because in the last patch, they made it so that the red zone dungeons will close 90 seconds after you enter it. So if you go into the dungeon and I'm doing this with a spear, so if I go in there with inner focus, I'm pretty safe. If people dive me, I can run away from them, right? And then after those 90 seconds pass, I can turn to Forest of Spears and I'll be clearing really fast. So during the time that I was farming in red zones, I did not get dove at all. Until at the very very end, I saw a chance of PvP. I was getting really bored out of there anyway, so I saw a PvP, and it was in the open world. It wasn't in the dungeon. Okay, it was in the open world. I saw PvP and I went PvP instead. But anyway, during the whole time that I was farming there though, I did not get dove. In corrupted dungeons, I farmed for 1 hour and there was 3 invades. And also in the red zones, it feels like I'm clearing faster in red zones because I'm using T8 equivalent gear, which in the red zone there's no gear cap, right? It's open world, there's no gear cap. So I was hitting the mobs a lot harder because no gear cap. In here in the corrupted dungeons, you're capped at 1000 IP, and with a 80% diminish return. So even using T8 equivalent gear, I had less than 1100 IP. And the mobs in here are tougher to begin with, so it feels like I'm clearing a lot slower in here. Right, so by this comparison, you can see that it's totally not worth your time at all to be ratting Stalker level corrupted dungeons. Now, if you already have, let's say, 500k infamy and you're ratting Slayer dungeons, I guess that makes more sense. But that's not what people are doing right now. People are literally just ratting these Stalker dungeons with 5k infamy or 10k infamy, and they're getting absolutely nothing from it. So if you are one of those rats that are ratting Stalker dungeons right now, just go to red zone dungeons, please. Thanks. Bye.